stuff now. I don't regard myself particularly as a cybersecurity person, but more as a security person in the round, because my background includes other areas around counterterrorism and financial crime, terror finance, and so on and so forth. And I'm looking at not only the cybersecurity of my target industries or target clients, but also physical security and even other things. Okay, so weaponizing artificial intelligence, which is what I'm supposed to be talking about. First of all, what do we mean by weaponizing? Most people, especially if they've been watching too many cool science fiction films like one that the couple that we saw a couple of clips of a few minutes ago, they think in terms of killing and destroying. You know, I grew up with Doctor Who, which of course dates me, and I remember watching I think it was the very first Doctor Who episode in which they had the Daleks, and everyone, you know, of course, exterminate, and this is what weaponizing means to a lot of people. And I also have genuine military experience. I also know about real weapons that are used to kill people. But when we talk about weaponizing technology, and particularly AI, it's not only about killing and destroying. A weapon is anything that can be used to gain power or influence over an enemy or rival or competitor. And it doesn't necessarily have to employ violence. Subterfuge is even better. Why do I say this? Because in my study of the field of security and warfare, I've tried to learn a fair amount from Sun Tzu, the famous Chinese strategist who was actually a real general in China. And so he was not just theorizing, he was also talking about the real world of warfare. And his view of warfare was that if you can avoid actually engaging with the enemy, then you can achieve your aims without killing or injuring anyone, let alone having your own side killed or injured, so much the better. And I think that AI plays a big role in this, but I'd also like to go back to other principles. Everything we talk about in the field of cybersecurity and cyber threat and so on and so forth, there are parallels that go back in history that are very important to understand. I did a presentation once on cybersecurity technology in which I actually used photos of World War I technology, essentially things like radio direction finding and cutting telephone wires, as a parallel, as an analogy for what we are doing today. Everything that we do today, including deepfakes, has been done before. It's just been done less successfully, less technologically, slower, perhaps easier to discover. But all of the things that we're talking about here, is very important to understand that we're not actually inventing anything terribly new in terms of human behavior. And perhaps not even in terms of machine behavior. Go and have a look at exhibitions of Leonardo da Vinci's inventions of the original tank and the original helicopter, what, 500-600 years ago. These are things that have simply been made more sophisticated. So why do I mention this? Because AI, as we understand it today, is just a more sophisticated version of the things that we have already done before many, many times for many, many centuries. Why is it more powerful? Because of its technological capabilities. AI is far faster than human perception. The human eye can perceive movements in about 1/18 of a second. This is why when we go to see films at the cinema or see video, we don't notice the movement between the different frames. If the frames move in less than about 1/18 of a second, then it's all continuous. This is important because the whole concept of perception matters in AI, it also matters in cybersecurity. We are able to perceive certain things and respond to them, or perhaps not. AI does things a lot faster. So if we can use technology to make many threats or make many things happen quickly, it's going to be more effective. The technology can multitask thousands or millions of events in a way that we as individuals can't do. Now, why is this more sophisticated than conventional computing? Actually, it's an upgrade more than being incredibly different, at least as far as I understand it. If we can attack lots of different targets at the same time, it's more effective than attacking a fewer number of targets at the same time. The other thing is that the technology of AI is difficult to distract because it's programmed. It doesn't notice stuff on the periphery like we see in the corner of our eye or hear the subtle noise in the background when we're talking to someone, or for that matter, when I'm talking to you now. And so we have a more powerful group of technologies. Okay, all of this is great. What it means is that we can, for example, run cars or aircraft or ships or whatever autonomously. The industry that I'm very much involved in is actually maritime, shipping and ports. And there's a huge number of things in the sense of Internet of Things that are used in these industries. By the way, the same is also true for aviation. And we want to be able to control them. And we also want to be able to get feedback from all of these things in order to know what's going on. This also means that anyone who wants to attack these industries has to be able to understand that there are new technologies that are going to be attackable, that can be fed false information, or that can be cut off. False information is actually much more valuable than simply stopping something from giving information to the control center, because then you can manipulate the system that you're trying to attack. And this, in the same way as when you're in the boxing ring, you want to manipulate the perception of your opponent that he thinks that you're going to give him a right, or can you actually going to do something completely different. This, I think, is one of the major issues that we're not taking into account. AI is seen as some sort of magic. It's not. It's basically doing the same kind of things that we've already been doing for thousands and perhaps 100,000 years, but faster, more deterministically, and with more reliable, or usually reliable, responses from your own senses and from the other side. What AI doesn't do is something that's extremely important, and that's what I would call humanity. First of all, it's mistakes that are not the result of deliberate falsification by the other side, but mistakes that are the result of your own emotions. So far, AI doesn't have emotions, at least not that I'm aware of, but it's probably going to happen. And this is something that we need to take into account, because when you start to use AI as a weapon against whoever, you may find that how should I put it? The information that you're providing to the other side becomes too much or too difficult for the other side to respond to. Another issue is the reliability of the program, something that we heard from Stuart a few minutes ago. When you, I was speaking at an event in the House of Lords a few years ago about AI, somewhat unprogrammed, because there are supposed to be other people speaking, and I sort of stuck my nose in and started talking about the security aspects. And one of the problems that came up was that AI is supposed to be well programmed and it's supposed to be reliable. But actually, when you have a system that is supposed to do certain things, like drive your car for you or drive your aircraft for you, do you actually know what is inside the black box? AI is fundamentally a black box. But you know that the people who programmed the black box did it correctly according to the specifications, and they didn't make mistakes, never mind the question of malice. So we also have the problem of how AI is possibly weaponized sort of behind our backs, in the same way as someone can defraud your bank account, but not by using the technology of a man in the middle or whatever, but simply deflecting the attention or exploiting the stupidity or blindness of the other side. And by the way, this is something that I've experienced myself in having been defrauded in a bank more than once, because the people in the bank didn't do their work properly. It wasn't a deterministic task. It was something where there was judgment involved, and they misjudged really, really badly. So we have, I'm sorry I'm going off slightly to a tangent, but I warned you at the beginning, this is going to be sort of rather stream of consciousness. You have a lot of things happening that we don't yet understand in terms of the response of AI systems. How easy are they to distract? How easy are they to misprogram? Quite apart from the pure technology issue, you know, is the circuit actually going to respond correctly at all times? We don't know. And there are too many unknowns here, from my point of view, to really rely on AI that well. I think that there's a lot more work that needs to be put into it. A lot more work in terms of testing, a lot more work in terms of stress testing, before we can completely rely on AI to drive our cars for us. We already know that they can be hacked, and there have been plenty of experiments to show that cars and aircraft and ships and so on and so forth can be hacked, and of course can kill people as a result. But I think that we need to go further, because human life matters a lot more than technology. Where else can I go? There's another problem, which is that AI, as we already have understood, is a lever for state actors, terrorist groups, criminals. They have resources and they have technology capabilities. Here we're talking about what's happening today in, for example, the relationship between China and the rest of the world. China has developed tremendous technological capabilities. I'm not saying, by the way, that China is necessarily the evil empire and that it's necessarily the enemy, but it's got tremendous technological capabilities that, frankly, it's invested a lot more than the rest of the world. And I'm not just talking about Huawei. So basically, it creates an economic advantage, human advantage, military advantage for Chinese actors in all sorts of situations. How do they use AI in doing this? First of all, in order to be able to analyze or gather and analyze much more data. What we're seeing in China at the moment is an enormous amount of personal data of people's movements, activities, financial activities, what they write to each other on the various social media, and so on and so forth. And it's all analyzable in order to essentially control them. And this is exactly what is happening. The Chinese government is using AI, not just big data, but AI, in order to control people by threatening them, at the very least. We know what you're doing, we know what you're up to, and we have a pretty good idea of what you're planning. And therefore, we are going to punish you if you don't behave. Or maybe we're just going to punish you because we believe that you're going to misbehave. This is a huge threat against, frankly, human dignity. And it's something that can be applied by others, because in the same way as China's already perfected these techniques, other governments have already developed perhaps less sophisticated versions. I think that state control of the population is a massive threat to the human race, because it creates too much power in the hands of small numbers of people who may just be malicious, they may be mentally ill, they may be whatever. Megalomania is something that we unfortunately have experienced in lots of countries. I'm old enough to have had parents who went through the Second World War and therefore experienced the results of megalomania. And I knew plenty of other people who went through the results of megalomania in Stalinist Russia and so on and so forth. And by the way, we also have megalomania in today's Iran and today's North Korea, and et cetera, et cetera. AI is a tool for all of these bad people and their bad intentions, because it gives them control of more information, and in some cases the ability to say to the public, not just we have all of this information, but we're going to use this information in order to control you. So basically we've got the 1984 situation that is leveraged by modern technology in a way that, of course, Orwell couldn't have imagined. Am I talking about terrible scenarios? Yes, I'm afraid I am. And one of the things that we need to be able to do in our world of technology is to understand the possible threats, the possible risks to us. And we also need to think about how we can turn some of the technology back on malicious state actors or terrorist actors or whatever. Yes, AI is used a great deal in order to prevent terrorism. I can't go into too much detail about this because I'm somewhat involved in the subject, but basically we're talking about gathering large volumes of intelligence and analyzing it, preferably as quickly as possible, in order to be able to preempt terrorist actors, or for that matter, state actors acting as terrorists.
Just a 2-minute on the clock, David. How long's your video?
Well, basically it's about a minute. So, all right, so I'll give you the video. Since we've been talking about, okay, just a second. How do I get my...
Do you have the green share button, David?
Just a sec, I need to see where this is. Yeah, okay. Share. Share screen. Doesn't seem to... Why am I getting someone else?
Is it on YouTube? Is it on YouTube, David? Do you want me to access it?
It was. I mean, this is actually taken from YouTube.
Okay.
Okay, so look, since this is screwing up, this is a BBC News clip from about a year ago showing how deepfake is used in order to create an artificial video of Barack Obama giving, fake information. And this is not something that's even terribly new anymore. There are more sophisticated, more convincing versions of this kind of deepfake.
Okay. Let me
The
see if I
point,
can show that for you. David,
okay.
Hopefully people can see my screen.
Yeah, YouTube watch. Okay, you've got it.
I can't hear the video.
No?
Richard, can you?
Is
You've
it
got the
worth
camera?
sharing? Is it worth sharing the YouTube on?
Yeah. Let me share it on the. There we go.
Yeah,
You got far too many tabs open there, Richard.
King of the tabs. Okay, I've shared that. David, do you want to summarize for a minute?
okay. Look, the point here is that it's very easy to convince people of information that is not true. And in this particular case, deepfake is a more convincing way of saying to the public, I'm the President of the United States, I've just pressed the button, and Beijing is going to be vaporized in 5 minutes time, or whatever it happens to be. And this is not insignificant, by the way. I've actually worked on a project to do with the security of the nuclear command structure, where one of the real vulnerabilities is that the President of the USA in particular can be fooled by deepfake. Now, I'm not saying that he's just going to make a decision, let's blow up Beijing because of one deepfake video, but actually it's possible to come up with a lot of good deepfake information that will fool an enemy intelligence organization, at least for a while. And given the time frame that's the very limited time in which the President of the USA can actually launch a nuclear strike, so things can go very, very wrong. And this is one of the threats that we're actually dealing with. This is weaponization par excellence. I'm sorry to put it in those terms. But we have a situation today where it's very easy to fool people in all sorts of circumstances, whether it's this or saying that the CEO of some major international company has just committed suicide, or it can be any number of things where the public can be fooled or decision makers can be fooled using artificial intelligence tools that create convincing fake information. And by the way, to put this in context, one of my favorite films from many years ago, black and white film, is called The Prisoner of Zenda. I don't know if anyone else has seen it, Douglas Fairbanks Jr. The point was that the ruler of this Principality of Ruritania was kidnapped, and a substitute was put in his place, his cousin, who looked exactly like him and sounded like him. And the fake prince was used in order to basically take over the target country. So this is not something that's completely new in terms of today's deepfakes. Deepfakes actually go back a long way in terms of our imagination, the things that we think can be done in order to fool people. And it's just that AI is a more reliable, maybe, way of doing it. Please remember, everything that's happening in this field of security or insecurity has parallels in older culture. And we're not inventing anything new. And we've got to bear this in mind when we're talking about security issues. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for your patience. I'm sorry if confused anyone, but I'm sure that we'll sort it out.